a comparison between the two players. It's been a discussion about team building and the way to build a team. And when you talk about like resetting the clock on a quarterback, I can kind of get with that angle if you're sure that the quarterback that you're resetting with is like the guy, right? But the reality is it was a higher slotted draft pick, so we were paying more money to a quarterback when we had a guy under control for 2 more years, and we had a massive offensive line problem that we didn't address. And that's kind of what it comes back to for me is like, it's not necessarily are we in a bit better position and is Sam Darnold still the quarterback today if we take Penei Sewell? It's is the team in a better position today if we took Penei Sewell? And I think it's hard to say anything other than yes, right? Because at the very minimum, we don't have a left tackle problem, right? And maybe this Rodgers thing develops, maybe it never does. Maybe we have another journeyman. Maybe it's still Sam. Who knows, right? But at the very least, we have a left tackle if we make that today. And then when you spin it out to what the 49ers gave up to Miami to get up to 3, they got, I think, the 12th pick that year and then first round picks in the following 2 seasons. And then I think Miami ended up flipping the 12th pick to Philly or something to move up to 6 to get Waddle. So like there was a lot of moving pieces there. So who knows if we draft at 12 or if we're smart enough to move up to 6 because Sewell went at 7. So like there's a lot of moving parts there, right? But if we make the right trade and we get 2 first-round picks and we still are able to take Sewell, who are those extra 2 first-round picks? Do we get somebody there? Do we get a quarterback in the next 2 years, right? Do we get another bite at the apple and we have another young guy? So it's so hard to make an apples to apples here. And we'll try to save most of this for the quarterback docuseries, but it's an interesting thing to think about for sure.
Yeah, and I believe in addition to obviously whatever they had to trade up to go from 12 to 6. But Miami, I know for a fact the other 2 picks ended up becoming Bradley Chubb and Tyreek Hill from that Niners trade. So like, you look at the Dolphins who made the playoffs this year was essentially because they traded from 3 when we wouldn't trade from 2. So,
and maybe we still get Aaron Rodgers and still have a number 1 pick.
Certainly something to think about, and we will dive in deep in that in our quarterback mini series. Let's briefly touch on the other game. Chiefs are going back to the Super Bowl for the 4th time in 6 seasons, which is just an unbelievable run. We've talked a little bit about this on the show. I have a bit of a conflict of interest with my day job. I will be rooting heavily for the Chiefs. But here's my pitch as to why all Jets fans should be rooting for the Chiefs. This run that Mahomes is on, I saw a tweet from Aaron Schatz, who ran Football Outsiders for forever. And I don't know what his data is, but I trust it. He was basically like, I've crunched all the numbers. We have never seen a peak as good as the peak Mahomes is in right now. It's better than the peak Manning run. It's better than the peak Brady run. He was like, as far as career numbers to go, Brady is still the better quarterback. But Mahomes has already surpassed him in one area. As Andy Reid is, still one of the top offensive play callers, if not the best offensive play caller in the NFL. Mahomes is 28. The team around him is evolving. They're winning they're winning now in a different way than they were before. As he keeps winning, we are going to have to hear less and less about fucking Brady and Belichick and Gronk and all that stuff will be, no one talks about like the people still talk about Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and, people talk about the Cowboys 3 rings, but it's always but they weren't as good as the Patriots. And we have to hear about the Patriots now over and over again. If the Chiefs keep up this run, we'll never have to hear about them as much ever again. Everything will be compared to the Chiefs and Mahomes, and the Patriots will be like a thing of yesteryear. Back in the NFL when you had to run and, those first 3 Super Bowls will look a lot less impressive than Mahomes' Super Bowls in context with the way that offense is played from the NFL. So that's my pitch as to why people should be rooting for the Chiefs. But Paul, I need kind of an unbiased view. Am I crazy, or is it really getting to be that close, the comparison between this dynasty and the Patriots?
No, I mean, dude, Like I know the tweet you're talking about, and let me provide some numbers to go along with it. So it's through the first 6 seasons of their career. So we're not talking about the rest of Brady's career. We're talking about the first 6 seasons that both of them are starters. Mahomes is 2 games better in the regular season. He's got one more playoff win. He's got one more AFC title. He's got one less Super Bowl ring, but that could change, right? So that could be tied. He has almost 100 more touchdown passes. He's got 15 fewer interceptions, and he's got him beat in quarterback rating by 15 points. So, like, it's not necessarily close. Like, Mahomes is a lot better than Brady through their first 6 seasons. And so, like, I get it, man. Like, the more we can bury that dynasty, the happier I'll be. And I saw a commercial during the game last night for that Apple TV Plus series that's coming out about the Patriots, which I hope is going to be like a little bit of a smear hit piece on Belichick. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it will be. It might just be all flowers and sunshine. But I hear you on that. I think the NFL fans as a whole has a lot of fatigue around the Chiefs already, and I don't necessarily remember the same thing when the Patriots were building, but I think that could be like a social media thing, right? Like Twitter wasn't around, like we didn't have the ability to communicate with each other as much when the Patriots were building up this thing. So I'm sure there was the same frustration and fatigue at the time, but it just wasn't as widely known. But when you make the case like that, it's hard to argue with. Like if we can put to bed the whole this dynasty will never happen again in the history of professional sports thing, and it happens like within 10 years again and it's gone. I mean, man, what more could we ask for?
Yeah. And yeah, so all I'm asking for essentially is when they make those memes for like who is America rooting for in this Super Bowl where it's all 49ers except for like Kansas City, Missouri, there should be a slightly different shade of red in New York for Jets fans. That's all I'm
I
asking
hear
for.
you.
The last thing, I guess, before we move on from the Chiefs, uh, the other comparison that gets made, obviously Mahomes Brady, is Reed and Belichick. And Andy Reid obviously has all the cachet of like he took the Eagles to 5 straight NFC Championship games, one Super Bowl, didn't win, but he took 2 different teams to a Super Bowl now. He's going for his third. Um, I don't I don't know that like how I guess do you see Andy sticking around where Reed and Belichick becomes a genuine debate? And how many Super Bowls would he have to win? Would he have to win 6 or 7 in order to pass Belichick in greatness, or does he get the benefit of all of his work with the Eagles as well, where he doesn't have to win as many Super Bowls?
Yeah, I mean, I think if he can start to catch up in the Super Bowls, then you can use his success with the Eagles as like the trump card, right? And you could say, they kind of had similar success with these great quarterbacks, right? But look what Reed did without that, where
Yes.
Belichick never really did that with any other team. Didn't do it in Cleveland, didn't do it in the pre and post Brady era in New England. And if he, somehow never gets hired again, and if he's, I don't want to say blackballed from the NFL, but if people are tired of him and they don't want to hire him again, then he'll never have the chance to catch Shula. And so, like, the whole conversation, whereas we've all kind of accepted Belichick as the greatest coach of all time, that conversation starts to get a little muddy the longer Reed stays around. And the other thing about Reed, I don't know where he is in career wins, but I saw something a week or two ago that he took both the Eagles and the Chiefs to like 4 or 5 straight conference championships, which is an insane thing to be in your conference championship 5 years in a row or 4 years in a row. That's crazy, right? Like it's hard to do. And so I think, obviously different sides of the ball. I remember early on, like kind of at the beginning of the Mahomes era in Kansas City, there was like these stories of Reed, like he would like go watch like 7-on-7 football games in like these weird fringe leagues and just like go watch games and take notes for how to like add on to his offense and do like weird concepts and crazy things. And like, I don't know, like that it's one of the coolest stories I've ever heard. It's just a guy like lives, breathes, sleeps it, always kind of innovating on offense. And I'm not sure Belichick was constantly innovating, so to speak, on defense. He was very good at like changing week to week, right? Like it wasn't just a lineup and play thing with
No, he
Belichick
had
on
a game
defense.
plan
It
for
was
every
always
team.
like what exactly like whatever you thought he was going to do to you, you were wrong, and he thought of something new to do to you. It always kind of started with like, I'm going to neutralize your best player. That was always like the bread and butter of it. But then there was always another concept underneath it that nobody was prepared for. And if you're lucky and if you're a good coach, you can try to adjust at halftime. And then he had a backup, right? Where he would also switch at halftime, and he would stop doing to you what he was doing in the first half. And like there's, countless stories of that. But in terms of the innovativeness, like I don't know, and likability too, like the likability factor, Reed's a lot
Of
more
course.
likable than Belichick, and that's not just because I'm a Jets fan. Like he's a genuinely likable person. So yeah, I mean it'll be an interesting debate for sure.
So you touched on this very briefly, but we should give it its due. There are two jobs left in the NFL: Commanders and Seattle. I would be shocked if Bill Belichick gets either, based on reporting coming out of this coaching cycle, which means he will likely not have a job in 2024. Do you think he gets a job in 2025, or is this it for Bill Belichick? Has the league passed him by? No one, it not necessarily. He's obviously a phenomenal coach, but given how the last couple of years have gone with the Patriots and the propensity of teams to want to get like, hey, we want a coach who's going to implement their program and be here for 15 years and take us to multiple championships, like people might not see Bill as that guy. Do you think he'll get another shot?
It's a it's an interesting question. I've heard it debated all week both ways, right? Like on one side, you can make the case that like there's going to be 6 or 7 more head coach openings next year. And it would be crazy to think that one of those desperate teams, whether they have a quarterback or not, might like, why wouldn't they be like, oh, this guy just was out of the league last year and he's the greatest coach of all time still, right? Um, why would we not call him, right? But there's a lot more to it than that. Like supposedly he went to Atlanta and like he didn't really wow anyone there, and I'm sure part of that was like, I'm bringing Josh McDaniels and Matt Patricia and my son with me, and like I don't know if anybody really likes those guys. Like Matt Patricia and Josh McDaniels are both approaching Adam Gase status, where like the NFL is a fraternity, man. Like if you have a job forever, right? Like it doesn't matter what you do, you get fired, like somebody's going to hire you to coach a position or to be a coordinator or something, right? Like you always have a job once you're in the NFL, and Adam Gase doesn't. And I think Patricia and McDaniels are kind of approaching that status where they've pissed off enough people and they've done a bad enough job in enough places where people are like, man, like these guys are toxic. We can't touch them. And if Belichick is showing up to these interviews and saying, these are all the people I'm bringing with me, like that's going to turn a lot of teams off. Also, Belichick, without like, obviously he's had a ton of success. And because of that success, I think Robert Kraft was able to overlook all like the nonsense that comes along with having Bill Belichick, like the constant like he's like insufferable with the media and like people don't like him, and then there's these scandals, whether it be recording other teams practices or like deflating footballs, and you could debate whether or not those are like real or not, or like if people were just out to get the Patriots or whatever, right? Like but the fact is that there is noise that comes along with having Bill Belichick as your coach. And if he's winning, you take that no problem, right? Like, accuse me of cheating all day long as I'm getting Super Bowl rings, I don't really care. But if he's not, which he hasn't without Tom Brady, it's hard to like invite all that noise into your house. And when you couple that with the Patricia and McDaniels thing, and like I don't know, it he might be like viewed as this is like something that we don't want to take on, unless we have the quarterback and the infrastructure in place to support it and make sure that we're going to be able to and maybe I'm crazy, maybe this is a little bit of Jets bias talking, but it would make me smile if like again, I don't want to use the word blackballed, but if there's like a little bit of just like skepticism about him and like maybe we don't want to bring that into our house, that would make me really happy. I have seen an unsubstantiated rumor on TikTok of all places. It was just some idiot on TikTok talking about how what if Reed wins the Super Bowl with the Chiefs this year, decides to walk away on top, and then Belichick slides in and he's got Brady V2 with him, and then he can just go on another run. And that, I think, is tremendously scary because he's still in
Yeah.
the AFC. He's still somebody you have to bump into all the time. He gets the Shula wins record probably within a year of taking that job. He can potentially add on more Super Bowls. And Mahomes, like you said, is only 28. He's got, minimum 10 years left, probably, barring something crazy happening. So that would be frightening. I hope that it is as much BS as it looks like right now.
Yeah,
And I
well,
hope there's
if
no
you
truth
saw it
to
on TikTok, it has to be true, right? So congrats to Bill Belichick on your many more Super Bowls as head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. No, I'm hoping that what you initially said is accurate, and it's just one of those things where he's one of the best coaches of all time, and there's not a team or something that fits. And maybe it's a Bill Cowher thing where for the next like 5 years we have to hear about, oh, Belichick's going to come back, and then he just never does. And if that's the case, his final act as head coach in the National Football League will be losing to the New York Jets. And I know I didn't want that a couple weeks ago, but god damn, does that sound good. So with that, thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure to upgrade your Patreon tier to War Room if you haven't already. Make sure you're following along and subscribe to the Badlands YouTube page so you get all of our amazing video content. And keep chirping us in the Discord. We love interacting with all our fans there and defending Paul's Josh Allen takes whenever we have to. I knew I had to get one knock in there. We see the comments. We love the discourse, and we're just having fun out here. So we like
By the way,
engaging with all of our fans.
Lamar Jackson's on the same list, by the way.
Oh, that'll drive people nuts. But we'll take both of those guys, by the way, on the Jets any day.
Of course.
Of course. That wraps us up, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.